folks, welcome back to another review with yours truly, Sam Healey. Today, we are taking a further look into Warhammer Underworlds Shadespire. We're taking a look at the two expansions that are currently available. I believe there's more to come, but right now, Ironskull's Boyz, the Orcs, and the Sepulchral Guard, the skeleton undead army. They're also available for expansions for the base game. So let's take a look at each of them, and then afterwards, we'll come back and kind of compare all four presently available armies together. Let's get down to the table. So here are Ironskull's Boyz. This is an expansion for Warhammer Underworlds Shadespire, and basically you've got the war boss Gurzag Ironskull and his knob entourage. Here we have Haka and Bonecutter and Basha models that are just exquisitely done, and I love how GW's models look. They have great detail. Their sculpting, the tricks of the trade, whatever they have is just amazing. These are snap fit or push fit models where you don't have to glue them. I have glued these just because I'm that way, but you don't have to. If you watch Rodney Smith's Watch It Played, he assembles one right on the fly, and it snaps together perfectly, and it's ready to play. So that's a cool thing. This is a great thing. I love how the bases already have that detail on them, and you know that's something that maybe the hobbyists will not like because they want to do their own bases, but this is great for people that are just getting into the hobby because you're going to have some really nice looking models without a whole lot of extra aftermarket type stuff that's necessary. Here is Gurzag Ironskull. He's the war boss himself. He's just the big leader guy, and this model is amazing. It just, the way it looks, the stance, the action, the movement that it has, I just really enjoy this thing a lot. Over here we have Bonecutter with that huge battle axe. I've always loved battle axes ever since I saw Conan wielding them in some of the comics that he had. Just always loved battle axes, and most of my D&D characters growing up, they had battle axes and stuff like that. I just love it. Really cool. But again, the model is just amazing. And then finally over here, we've got Basha, a couple of clubs, maces, just really, really a neat model. And a lot of good stuff going on here as well. As far as these different cards are concerned, we'll start over here with Haka. He's got a melee attack that's going to be rolling 2 white dice, looking for swords, and only does 1 damage. But he does have choppas. So if you roll at least 1 crit, this attack action has cleave, which will negate shield defense rolls. So that's a pretty cool thing as well. He can move 3, rolls 1 defense die, looking for shields, and then he has 4 hit points. Over here, Gurzag Ironskull, he has the boss choppas. And of course, melee weapon, he's rolling 2 dice, but they're doing 3 damage on a successful attack. That's really cool. He moves 3, rolls 1 black die, looking for shields, and has 5 hit points. Bonecutter over here uses the big choppa. And of course, it's another melee weapon. Rolling 2 dice, looking for hammers, and which is a better chance of hitting, actually, than the swords are. So that's another thing to take into account. He's doing 2 damage every time he gets a successful attack. He's moving 3, rolling 1 black die for defense, looking for shields, and has 4 hit points. Basha over here, again, melee attack, two attack dice with swords, and then he's doing 1 damage on a successful attack. He's moving 3, rolling one defense die for shields, and then he's got 4 hit points. Over here, he's got smashes. On a critical hit, this attack action has 1 knockback as well. So that's a pretty cool thing as well. He just can really knock you around. The package comes with 20 different objective cards. And one of the things that we've noticed so far is that none of these objective cards are for holding objectives on the board. So these guys aren't necessarily interested at all in holding the objectives. They are simply out for blood. So again, you can see here that we have Call of the Wah! And this says, score this immediately if 3 or more of your fighters made a charge action this phase. Really fun. And it's also pretty difficult to achieve. Not really. It's just I had this the entire game I played here recently, and I could not get it done. Just people were, I guess I was just too far away or something to that effect. It was hard for me. It'll probably be easier for other people. Just a couple of more. There's more of us. This one says, score this at an end phase if you have more fighters on the battlefield than your opponent. Brawl here says, score this at the end phase if all friendly fighters, at least 3, are adjacent to enemy fighters. So if you're out there going after it, you can score 2 victory points. Almost every single one of these are, well, at least the orc-specific ones. They are all very similar to just getting out there, scrapping it up, and we don't care about objectives. We just want to knock you out of this. And so that's pretty much the feel that the orc army has, and they really do get after it. And here are the Sepulchral Guard, the skeletons, the undead army for Warhammer Underworlds Shadespire. And again, we have the Warden that is right here, the Sepulchral Warden. He is the leader, and then the rest of these guys are his minions. The models, of course, are just spot on, just like you're probably used to seeing from Games Workshop. Now, I will say that these were a little bit more touchy to put together. The bones and stuff like that, because they're such small joints, they were a little bit more difficult. None of them broke, but I was very careful with them as well. So but they're very nice looking models, very well done. These are probably some of the best skeleton models that I've seen anywhere. Now, again, I haven't gone out of my way to research skeleton models. So just from my remembering and so forth and what I've seen in my travels, so to speak, these are some of the best looking models, some of the best detailed skeleton models that I've seen. So that was the champion. We went over there, the harvester with that giant scythe. Oh man, that's just a really cool model as well. And again, you can see that the miniatures, the bases of the miniatures are all very well done. A lot of action and movement in these models. Really like them a lot. And then over here we have the Prince of Dust. Has that big old mace on him, and just really a nice model as well. These different petitioners down here. This one's my favorite petitioner. He's got the little gravestone in the back, and he's coming up out of the ground, and just the way that the model goes into the base, it really flows. Everything, I mean, you can see where there's like right here at the bottom of the sword, you see some joint lines there, but other than that, that's gonna go right away when you put some paint on this, and it's really gonna look good. So I just really like this. He's using that sword for some leverage to pull out. Really like that model a lot. This petitioner over here has again, a lot of movement on it, a lot of action. I like that half of his skull is missing. That's really neat. So that's pretty cool as well. Just, again, really nice looking models, very much so. This petitioner, I like his stance as well. He's just finished a slash, and he's kind of all twisted up, you know, his arms on the other side of his leg. He's still looking at his target after that swing. You can tell he put a lot of oomph into it, well, as much as he possibly could, being a skeleton, but I just really like this model. Now, most of the petitioners, they're pretty much the same. They're just, you know, kind of like your rank and file. They're all melee attacks. They're all rolling 2 dice, rolling on swords, which is your least probable attack for these guys. They're all just doing 1 damage. They're all moving 2, or all rolling 1 die, trying to get the evade symbol, and they all have 2 hit points. So these guys are pretty much the same, you know, the rank and file type guys in the army. This is where some differentiation is made. However, I think they're pretty cool. For example, starting with the Harvester here, he has a Writhing Scythe ability where his attack targets all adjacent enemy figures, and you roll for each. And that's not an upgrade or anything like that. That's how he is all the time. Now, he is only rolling 2, and he's only looking for swords, so the probability of that happening is low. You want to probably get a lot of people attacking at the same time, get some support from your other armies. It will be doing 2 damage. He's moving 2, rolling 1, looking for an evade, and he has 3 hit points. The Prince of Dust over here, he has knockback 1 on this attack profile. He's rolling for hammers, 2 white dice, and it's only doing 1 damage, but that knockback can be pretty devastating as well. He's moving 2, rolling 1 defense die, looking for evade, and he has 3 hit points. Over here, same defensive and hit points and move characteristics as these other 2 guys, but his attack is a white blade, and he's rolling melee, 2 dice, looking for hammers, and it does 2 damage for a successful attack. No other special abilities on these 2 guys, but the Sepulchral Warden, he is the boss. He's the guy that's really taking charge. His attack is a ranged attack, so it can be up to 2 hexes away. He's rolling 2 dice, looking for hammers, and it does 2 damage. He moves 2, rolls 1 defense die, looking for evade, and he has 4 hit points, so he's the strongest. Now, the coolest thing about him, though, is his actions that he can take, these special actions. For example, he can place a friendly fighter that was taken out of action on a starting hex in your territory, and remove all the wounds counters from him. So that's a cool thing, because when you look at the Inspire ability, or the trigger, Inspire trigger for each of these other guys, it says this fighter is returned to the battlefield. So if the Warden ever returns somebody to the battlefield, they come back inspired, which means they're doing a little bit more, they're moving faster, they have the same number of hit points, but their attack is a little bit stronger as well, rolling more dice and so forth. The other action that he has available to him, though, it says choose 2 other friendly fighters, make move actions with these fighters. This does not allow a fighter to move twice in a phase. So not only can he bring people back after they've been knocked out, he can also activate basically 2 warriors with 1 action to have them move. So that's a really cool thing as well. If you look at some of their objective cards, some of them are pretty easy. Like this one here says, score in the end phase if all surviving fighters are in enemy territory. And since he has that ability to move a couple of guys out a lot, this, it's pretty simple. But you have other ones like, let me see if I can see here. They're not doing a whole lot of damage. But for example, the March of the Dead, it's worth 2 glory, but it says score this at the end phase if all of your surviving fighters, at least 5 out of the 7, made a move action in the preceding action phase. Yeah, remember, you only have 4 activations, so you could possibly do it if you use his twice and then move another one. So again, it's just something that you have to really be savvy on doing. You have to really keep track of your cards. But if you look at some of their objective cards, for example, Tactical Supremacy here, it says score this if at the end phase if you hold objectives 3 and 4. They're more of a strategic army. The orcs that we looked at a few minutes ago, they are just simply go out and pound things. These guys, yeah, you want to tag team other people. You want to try to move as much as possible to score all these points. But you have to be careful because they're kind of squishy. They die real easy. So first off, Ironskull's Boyz. I really like playing orcs. I think that this is a cool army to play. They're kind of right in the middle of being, well, I think they're the second easiest army to play. I think the first easiest are the Liberators that come in the base core box. I think these are probably the second easiest because they do have a slight weakness compared to the Liberators. You do have more models, though, than the Liberators do, which makes them a little bit more difficult because they're not as strong as the Liberators are, and some of their attacks aren't quite as powerful either. But these guys are really nasty to play with. They have a lot of cool power cards that are very orky in nature. I love the fact that there are no hold objective cards in their objective deck. They are just going out. They are for blood. They are to just cause as much damage as possible. I really think it's a neat concept. And one of the things that I like, and I'm just going to say this on the offset, is that each of these different armies plays differently than the others. So there's a lot of the very variable player power thing that's going on here is very strong with this game. And I love that because you have a different experience with each time you play the game if you're playing with a different army or if you're simply playing against a different opponent. The Ironskull boys are great for a style of play where you're just going to go and get them. You're kind of throwing caution to the wind. You're just going to smack, and you're going to smack as hard as you possibly can, and hopefully that'll win you the day. I really like playing the Ironskull boys. They're a great army. Now, the Sepulchral Guard is probably the hardest army to play with. They are very fragile. Now, they keep coming back. Don't get me wrong. There's some cool powers there, but this is definitely one where your leader is not going to be necessarily leading the charge. He's going to be in the background, in the shadows, making more of his minions pop up out of the ground as you continue to just swipe them. And that's also another thing you have to be careful with because they're not very strong. So unless you're ganging up on your opponent model by model, they're probably not going to be doing a whole lot of damage, but it only takes maybe one swipe, especially if you're playing against somebody like the Orcs, to knock one of your dudes out, which means that they're going to be popping a lot of glory points on your opponents because they're so squishy. But hopefully you can come back, you can score some of those objective cards that are in their deck to hopefully keep abreast. But again, that's a difficult thing to do, and it has a lot of it's almost like a tightrope type army where you want to go out and fight because you know you need to do that, but at the same time you want to kind of hold back because you don't want to give away too many glory points. But on the offset, as soon as these guys come back, they're inspired and they're a little bit stronger. They're moving a little bit faster. So it's I think this is a little bit more of a fragile army, a little bit more, a lot more strategy and tactics go into this army than the other ones. With the Liberators and the Orcs, you can pretty much just go hack and slash. Now with the Blood Reavers, and we'll get to those in just a few moments, they have a little bit more tactics and strategy thrown into it as well. But at the same time, these are probably the most, and they have a great look to them. The models are all tremendously well done sculpts, and they are very cool looking on the board, but you have to be careful with them. So I like these guys. They have a completely different feel than any of the other three armies, as I've already alluded to, and it is a great army. I really like them a lot. Now, the Blood Reavers, they are also one of the more tactical armies that you have to play, one of the more strategic ones, and I know those are different, but you have to put a little bit more thought into how you play these guys because they're weak enough to where they're kind of squishy like the skeletons are, but they also have some pretty powerful attacks, and they're really powerful, especially when you get them teaming up with other supporting warriors, fighters. So there's a little bit of both worlds. They are definitely a hack and slash type army, but you have to put some thought behind it. So this is probably right in the middle of the road along with the Orcs as far as how difficult these four armies are to play, with the easiest being the Liberators, the hardest I think being the Skeletons. These guys are a little bit easier than the Skeletons, but you do have to be very careful. Now the cool thing about this is that if three of them get knocked out, that's the trigger ability for being inspired. So the last two guys, they're going to be inspired, and they're going to be a lot more powerful than their basic versions were. So that's a cool thing. And again, I know if you sound like a broken record, but these guys play differently than all the other armies. I really like that about that, and so it's one of those things where you can really have some ownership to your army. I am different than everybody else. I love that. And finally, here we have the Liberators. Now, I think they're probably the easiest army to play. They're strong. Their attacks are nasty. They have great power-ups. They have awesome ploy cards. Their objective cards are really powerful. And some of them are difficult, but they're going to give you a lot of glory points at the end of the day. So this is probably, in my opinion, one of the easiest ones. I can see an argument for the Orcs being the easiest because they're strong and they have one more model. But I really do think that these guys are the easiest, and that's probably why this came in the base box. This was the easiest hack and slash army to play. The Blood Reavers were the easiest strategic, tactical army for you to play, and that's why both of those came in the core box, I think. I could be completely wrong, but that's what I think. But these are great. I love the models. They're all great. I love the fact that one of them is a female Sigmarite warrior. I love that. She's also a really nasty warrior at that, so that's cool as well. All of these guys are great, and these guys, of course, play different, like I said before, than all the other armies. So with Warhammer Shadespire, this is a 2-player game in the base box. I've already said that. Now, one thing that I didn't mention much in my previous review of the core box was the fact that, well, I mentioned that you could play with 3 to 4 players, but the reason I didn't really go into it is because you cannot play this 3 to 4 player with just one core set. You have to have 2 so that the other 2 players or 1 player can have a board with which to make the playing surface with. Additionally, the box only comes with 2 factions. It'd be kind of hard to play a 3-player game with only 2 factions. So you get why I didn't kind of go into the 3 to 4 player. But having gone over the expansions, you do need a second core set, or you simply have to have a friend that has his own core set in order to play a 3 or 4 player game. So take that for what it's worth. This is a 2-player game that has the ability to be 3 to 4 player if your planets align right and all that kind of stuff. I played a 4-player game. I have not yet played a 3-player game. So, but what my experience with the 4-player game is that the gameplay experience is the same. It just takes more time. So I'm assuming, and please understand that it's an assumption that a 3-player game will have the same kind of experience. It'll just take a little bit more time than a 2-player and a little less time than a 4-player game. Having said that, I think it's still a little bit longer than I want it to be, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think with 2 or 3 players, this is where the game is going to shine the most, with 2 players being the most shiny and 3 players still being pretty shiny, but not as much as 2. It's not that I won't ever play it with 4 players again. I just think that I don't know that I want to teach a 4-player game again, with teaching people how to play the game and all of the nuances of their objective cards and ploy cards and upgrade cards and all that kind of stuff, where, because there is a lot of text on the cards and it is a little heavy that way as far as knowing what your cards can do and how to use them to their best advantage. So not a gateway game at 4. It could be a gateway game, especially into the modeling genre, at 2, and possibly with 3, although I have yet to see. I'm going to be, of course, playing this more in the coming months, so maybe I'll take a segment on Throat Punch Lunch or something like that and talk about 3-player game for Shadespire. But for right now, I think you get the idea. This is definitely a 2-player game that, with some twists and minor changes, can be 3 to 4 players, but really it sings best at 2 players. Maybe 3, but I really enjoy it. Still, I think it's going to be one of my top 10 games of the year. Of course, you have to wait and see with some things that are still coming out with Essen, but great game. Still give the expansions high marks, 9 out of 10 on both the Sepulchral Guard and Ironskull's Boyz. Really enjoy this game. It's great fun. Go check it out if you have the chance. That's it from me. We'll see you guys on the flip side.